Hey, everybody. Danny Woodburn here with the ReelAbilities Film Festival, Los Angeles Schmooze Zoom. Next up, we have my friend, Jim LeBrecht, producer of Crip Camp with co-producer. You just said
Co-director, co-producer, Nicole Newnham.
Nicole Newnham. I remembered it. Co-producer Nicole Newnham and Academy Award nominees. Welcome, Jim. We're going to talk a little bit about accessibility in Hollywood, but I think people also would like to hear how the hell did you get this done? I mean, to get if we go back like 5 years, is that when the process started for you?
About 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it all started with a lunch, which is a wonderful way. By the way, I went to Fatter's Famous Deli yesterday on my way out of LA. I got to tell you, I had a bologna and cheese omelet to die for, but that's another story. So look, I've been working in documentary film for well over 2 decades, probably mixed easily 180 films. And one of the people that I'd worked for many times was Nicole Newnham. And she's an incredible documentary filmmaker. She's part of this wonderful community here in the Bay Area. And as she was wrapping up her last film, Revolutionary Optimist, about 6 years ago, I asked her out to lunch and said, there's a lot of documentaries around disability that I think would be really, really important to get produced. And I want to just pitch you a couple of ideas. Maybe you might be interested in directing. And, I talked to her about a few different subjects, and it was kind of like literally kind of on the way back to the building, not half-heartedly, kind of like sheepishly, I kind of said, I've always wanted to see a documentary about my summer camp. And I said, I think that there's a really good story here that could be lost to history about these people who grew up and lived in the New York area, all migrating to Berkeley. And I heard in the Q&A, a little, right after the film was released, that she kind of said, Jim, I kind of rolled my eyes when you said that. It's like everybody thinks their summer camp is special. But in reality, I sent her to this Facebook page where one of the counselors, Steve Huntingsman, had posted a bunch of black and white photos. And there you could see these campers from 1971 in these black and white photos having a great freaking time. Like really, really joyous. And I said, Nicole, the reason I went to Camp Jeanette was literally because I heard that maybe I could smoke dope with the counselors. And, here's a summer camp run by hippies for young adults with disabilities. And it's like what could go wrong, right? I mean, and as I started talking to her about this, she realized this was just blowing her mind open about disability and about the community. And she kind of came back a couple of weeks later and said, I want to do this, but you and I should direct together. And so we both directed, produced, and wrote the documentary. My wife, Sarah, who's a wonderful producer, came on as a producer. And that was the genesis of all of this.
Right. So getting from lunch and the Jenny
to Netflix.
To Netflix and the Obama.
Okay. Well, so it kind of goes like this.
This is 5 years in the making, right? I mean,
it took us 5 minutes from like lunch to kind of like premiering at Sundance, approximately.
Right.
Actually, it was my 59th birthday, so it was May 8th. Yeah. So anyway, about 5.5 years, right? And so, over the course of time, we had been able to make an incredible fundraising trailer. And this was like, also the real incredible thing about Crip Camp is that we had access to 5.5 hours worth of black and white video that had been shot at Camp Jeanette in 1971, including the infamous crab epidemic at Camp Jeanette there, which was the first thing that this group called the People's Video Theater shot. So we had this amazing kind of fundraising trailer. we had brought on an executive producer, Howard Gertler, and Howard had read about the Obamas starting a production company, Higher Ground Productions, and that they had this deal with Netflix. And Howard happened to bump into Priya Swaminathan, who was the principal of that organization at the time, say, look, you got to look at this video and this project I'm involved with. And she says, it's much too early. It's much too early. We don't even have an office yet. And then our sales agent, we got a sales agent.
It's never the right time, though, right? It's whenever you pitch, whenever you bring something to somebody, it's like, well, yeah, it's too early, or it's the two like refusals you get are, we don't have anything like it, so therefore we can't do it, or we have something just like it, so therefore we can't do it, right? But too early, too late, we're past the season, we haven't started, blah, 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 whatever.
Or we already have one show like that, so there can only be like one disability show, right?
Exactly.
Heaven forbid that America wouldn't want to see two shows that deal with, anyway.
I think there's a lot to be said about that, because I think in the disability community right now, it's like we've already filled that slot, right? So we don't need another guy or another thing like that, because we've already got that. I'm speaking from experience myself.
Well, yeah, and it's like, well, do we only need really? Well, we can go there. Final part of this whole story was that we were fortunate enough to get sales agent, and one of them, Josh Braun, was at Toronto, and he saw Priya, and he says, Priya, you got to see this video. He said, okay, send it to me. And then she called Nicole and I in the editing room a couple of weeks later and said, I don't know what you folks have done. I can't stop watching this video. And so she came up from Los Angeles to Berkeley, where we had our editing room. We spent the day together, showing her a bunch of
this is just like a pitch video, right? This is just like, this is what we're putting together. This is where we're headed, right? You guys should put that out so people can see, like, okay, I'm doing this kind of a documentary, or I'm doing this kind of film. What do potential buyers, producers, what should they look at? Like,
we would, but there was a bunch of copyrighted material in there, like music and clips that we didn't have the rights to. Right. So we never put it out like on YouTube or anywhere else. So I mean, I would love to, because
just do it until you get a cease and desist. That's kind of the way it is.
Okay, Danny. I mean, it included things that were more modern history in it.
Yeah.
Like Donald Trump making fun of the reporter, and people being carried out of the Capitol trying to save Obamacare and such. But in the long run, look, Nicole and I formed this incredible collaboration, and we decided that we were just following these people from Camp Jeanette, and that how they got involved with disability rights and the 504 sit-in and the ADA was really, really important, and that we didn't necessarily need to talk about the history beyond the ADA. It would kind of age the film in the long run anyway.
Right.
Plus, leave this open for other people to make documentaries about. We are not all-encompassing when it comes to disability history.
Right. It's a historical account that takes you to a certain point. And I feel like it's a point that hasn't been told up to now. And you guys sort of got there to tell this story. Because if it has been told, not enough people have seen it the way they've seen Crypt Camp. So we're all going under the assumption that everybody on here has seen it. Yeah.
Well, available on Netflix, and for those that don't have Netflix, they were really remarkable. And when the pandemic hit, they realized their educational license wasn't going to work for people, and they allowed it to be available on YouTube. And surprisingly, they've left it up a year after they said they were going to take it down.
Wow, that's amazing.
And there's two versions. One of them is open captioned and audio described, and one of them is without captions.
Oh, I thought you were going to say one has nude shots of you and one doesn't.
We are R-rated, but it's not because of that. Because otherwise, we needed an audience, so...
And, by the way, I'd say you're definitely a lady killer.
When I was 15, I never realized that I was like halfway reasonably good looking.
Yeah, you had some Mac Daddy stuff happening there.
So you know this business, right? So for folks, when you're editing a movie or TV show or whatever, you're editing along and like you stop, the phone rings or something, and you just stop your computer system on a specific frame of the film. And we happened to stop one day on a specific frame of the film that showed me at 15 from this black and white footage, and you could see this big hickey on my neck.
All right, we're getting off track.
No, we're not. We're just getting started. So, but the great thing about the film, I think, for everybody is just we wanted to open up minds about what it meant to be disabled, both for the disabled community and not. And I think that we've achieved that, and we are hearing about this Crip camp effect, in which people are getting. It's easier to get meetings, and that more companies are open to saying, we're not in this space, and we realize that we want to be.
Right.
We didn't realize that there was a space or that we could or should. And I just heard that the other night from somebody from Discovery when I was at this special preview of the Selma Blair documentary, that they said, we saw Crip Camp, and it said, what are we doing in this space? And, and it's remarkable.
I think too, it's really, right time, right place, right time. I think if you guys were trying to do this 10 years ago, and certainly you had the material and you're trying to do it 10 years ago, I don't think the interest would have been the same, because I think really in the last 5 years, since like 2016, things have really been moving along, I think, in this space. I mean, incremental, yes, but I mean, because we have social media, we can advocate more loudly for ourselves in the disability community. And so I think people prick up their ears and pay attention to what's going on. And you guys coming into this spot takes it to that next level, right? So we all get to see the show, it gets nominated, and now it becomes this, I was going to use an SAT word, but I don't want to sound pretentious, but now it becomes this sort of beacon, this sort of go-to example of like, okay, this is acceptable. This language is acceptable. I don't know if you could have called it Crip Camp 10, 15 years ago, right? Because we didn't necessarily have ownership of that yet.
But Nicole and I wanted a real edgy title that kind of said, look, this is not like an situation.
No.
And that this is really like, we're getting, it's joyous, but it's definitely has a political bent to it.
People would have blanched at it, and they would have wanted you to go down that inspiration porn path, right? They would have wanted you to go down that. And this is blunt, and it's real, and it I always say, people when people talk about people with disabilities, and even in our community, and they talk about their nobleness or their angelicness, and I always correct them. I said, no, there's plenty of assholes in this community. We're not all that, It's just about acknowledging our presence as part of the community as a whole.
Well, the thing is that with any really good film or television show or anything else, I think authenticity is really important. And here is a film that I, as someone for the disabled community, had an understanding of film, but had never like been a director or such, teamed up with a really excellent filmmaker who I had known for a long time, and we had a sense of trust and developed this very good working relationship. And as a result, the authentic voice of our community, I mean, we were saying the words. It was coming from us. We weren't being observed or seeing it through an able-bodied person's lens.
Right. You had control too of what material was going to be put out there. You're not just saying the words, obviously saying the words on screen, but, metaphorically in the editing room, delivering the message.
Yeah, but we also did things like budgeted to have a work in progress screening that was open captioned and audio described, so that we could gather a bunch of people from the Bay Area, from the disability community, and said, come over here. We actually did it over at DREDF. For a lot of folks may know DREDF, the Disability Rights Education Defense Fund. And we sat down and had, well, I was already sitting, but sat down and had a screening and then had a good note session. And it was incredibly beneficial. And also there was a laugh in the film that we didn't pick up on, in which Jean, this woman, says, "Look, I was hit by a bus, and I don't know quite how that affects me." And when she said, "I was hit by a bus," somebody in the background says, "Congratulations." And they said, "Why didn't you subtitle that?" And I said, "Subtitle what?" She says, "Congratulations." And it's one of the bigger laughs of the film now.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we have a quick question that came in. It says, so we're all thrilled with Crip Camp. Does that mean Hollywood is woke when it comes to accessibility?
Well, woke is very final, right? I think there is awakening happening, but I don't think woke is the right word. Jim, what are your thoughts?
I mean, certain folks have become more aware, and they realize that you can't do something on disability without people with disabilities being involved.
Well, you can.
Well, you can. It's probably going to be a big fat ass turd. But
people try to get it done.
But look, there are film productions in which they have an accessibility coordinator. Recently we started having intimacy coordinators for intimate scenes. People are doing things like having accessibility coordinators, we have an actress with who is neurodiverse, and hiring somebody like an Elaine Hall to come in who has an experience doing this to work with their production and one of their actors. These things are starting to happen, but there's a long way to go. I mean, we all had an incredible experience at the Oscars, and in which I and a few other people have been talking with the Motion Picture Academy before the Oscars and saying, look, it's very, very simple, actually. Give people who are using wheelchairs the same experience as everybody else, not separate but equal. And right from driving up, getting out of our vans to the red carpet and everything, there wasn't anything we could do. And we're there with Judy Human, who's a wheelchair user, and Andrea Levant, who ran our impact campaign, and her service dog Goji. I mean, it was a wonderful experience. And then, but are we woke? I don't think so, because I started trying to reach out to the Television Academy back in April and eventually to CBS saying, your stage needs to be visibly accessible. And I kept on hearing things about, we're in compliance. And anybody with a disability knows when they're saying compliance, they mean they're doing the bare minimum. And I did my damnedest. Finally, I got some help to send a ADA complaint letter to the Television Academy and CBS who are producing it, and showing them that there was code involved for award ceremonies. And they said, we are compliant. And it's a kind of a long story that, but in essence, there was no visibly accessible way to get on that stage when a CBS lawyer had told me that was going to happen. And then trying to deal with this and getting an incredibly dismissive response in the trades from the people that designed the set. And then finally having like the head of the Television Academy on that stage, walking up 4 steps and saying, we are very inclusive, and realizing that nobody in a wheelchair could have gotten up there. If they had simply done something that was overtly accessible, like that stage at the Oscars, it would have told some kid out there watching TV that maybe I could get a job in the entertainment industry.
Right.
Maybe I would be welcomed. But they totally blew an opportunity to give beyond lip service that they could really give a flying what about inclusion with people with disabilities.
That could have been something as simple as a coordinated effort to show, even with a cutaway, someone using the ramp. I mean, even if you just tricked us, tricked
And
us.
look, Danny, I don't know. Did you watch the Emmys broadcast?
I saw some of it. I didn't see all of it.
So I heard, hey, we are going to have somebody with a disability as a presenter. Well, bless her heart, there was a Paralympian who walked up those stairs with help, who got a big round of applause.
Yeah,
I think that should have been an actor from one of the television shows that we've seen in the last couple of years.
absolutely. And
It should have been an absolute professional in our business, as opposed to, again, they're not woke. They think they're doing something good, and it's like it was.
And I will say that CBS has been a longstanding ally in this process. You and I were both, but that's the truth with regard to networks. You and I were both at CBS events for mentorships and doing those kinds of things there, and they were the first studio to sign the agreement to seek out, look for, and hire people with disabilities in front of the camera. So they have been on the right path. And, I think there's going to be missteps, and people need to be awakened further on a regular basis.
Yeah, and look, it's a large company, right?
Yeah.
And so, look, I honor the work that they did. Indeed, I remember being there with CBS and knowing that the people there, a lot of them are good allies. But when it comes to something this important, it was a lost opportunity. And look, I don't want to damage relationships our community has with the network. It was just very, very disappointing. And so let's honor them for the work they do, and let's all find a way to move forward beyond the Emmys, like Golden Globes or Grammys or any place else.
Yeah, and it's not even.
Danny, can I interrupt for a sec real quick? This is Jaime. We got a question from the audience. Going back to an earlier item that was raised about how do we increase the number of films that authentically represent people with disabilities? And the question is it really a matter of interest in the topic, or is it about revenue that drives what gets produced and what gets looked at, what gets pitched and what gets accepted?
Did you say revenue? Did he say revenue?
Yeah, revenue versus interest.
Well, I think there's, from what I know, there's a lot of misconceptions about the revenue. We know the revenue is there. We've done studies on the revenue and who will actually watch, the audiences that will watch it. I think it's more about stigma. It's more about how do we tell those stories? I think the industry of the past is how do we tell those stories without the people in the room to tell the stories, not thinking, well, we should hire the people in the room to tell the stories. They never thought that. And only now are they starting to realize, oh, that's how we tell the stories. We get the people who know the stories and know the experience, the lived experience, to tell the stories. So it's definitely not about revenue. And it's more about misconception and stigma around disability and the telling of disability stories.
Well, you need a breakthrough production that tells people, oh my gosh, the way we've been thinking about this doesn't necessarily hold water anymore. And if they don't think people with disabilities should be producers and executives and directors, then they're going to rely on the old tropes or stories that have brought in a certain amount of money every year. But when, finally getting a chance to show, if you actually ask, there are stories that people beyond disability want to see. Everybody wants to see a story about somebody who they can relate to. And just because I use a wheelchair doesn't mean I'm relatable. I'm not relatable to a huge group of people. I may not be a good example. I'm horrible. I'm a horrible person, but
you are a horrible person. But you don't have to be relatable because maybe the wheelchair aspect of you isn't relatable. But maybe your lived experience as a married man is relatable. Your lived experience as a child of the 60s is relatable. There's all these other things about you, Jim, that are not, I don't want to know it, but but they're relatable. It's not that one thing. And I think the mentality in this industry is, if we see, we'll use you. If we see Jim on screen, in the wheelchair, we go, oh, what's the wheelchair story? And we don't walk through the world. If we see somebody rolling down the street, we don't pull over and go, what's your story? We just accept the fact that they're in the world. And that's where the film industry has to, we don't talk about somebody being a redhead on screen. So we just have to get to the point where we understand, oh, these people are part of the community. We don't have to always ask them, how did you get in the wheelchair? Why are you?
What happened to you?
Yeah, what happened to you? Exactly. Why are you like that?
What the hell happened to you?
What happened to you and what's wrong with you? Those are the two questions.
Well, Danny, indeed, it used to be 40 years ago, if you had somebody, let's say they were African American, the storyline typically was about their experience, right?
You don't have to go back 40 years, right?
No, okay, well, yeah, whatever, right? So
Yeah.
Our community needs to be in films and television in which this is not the reason for us being on the screen, but it's the fact that, we are a doctor or that we are a barista.
Yeah.
And that's just that we're part of society. And when we can get to that point that this is every day, then this quote unquote normalization is going to go a long way to really helping the overall community.
This goes back to early on in my experience in this industry, trying to get an audition for one of those popular medical shows. I won't name the show, but any number of popular medical shows. As a doctor, I said, oh, this is a great doctor role for me. I could do this. And the feedback I got back from, and it's not that long ago, feedback I got back from casting was, oh, he could never be a doctor, which is, absurd. But it's that sort of belief system around disability. It's like, you can't A, B, C, X, Y, Z, whatever.
Well, I got to tell you, I was at UCLA medical school talking to a bunch of incoming students. And one of the questions they kept on asking us, what can we do when they are using endurance as a sign about whether we can actually pass our classes? Like, you have to do a 24-hour shift. Well, some people with disabilities, they can't do that. But what are they going to learn in a 24-hour shift that they can't learn in a 15 or 16-hour shift? And indeed, your point is obviously well taken. Obviously, you could become a doctor. But the issues here are the same in the entertainment industry. Endurance is not a sign of someone's value or their ability to really be an incredible participant in your production. And if you're going to use endurance to filter people out of entry-level positions, you're not only cutting out people with disabilities, you're cutting out single parents, you're cutting out all sorts of other people for which endurance really should not be like a sign of your dedication. It's crap.
Right. So I think
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Yes, no, we'll go to more
One
questions.
last question. So last thing to note, it's like we have 2 minutes left. And so the last question is, are we making more progress in front of the camera or behind the camera?
It's not a and or. I think it's an and. We are making progress in front of and behind. How do we know this? Well, because of our constant communication with studios regarding hiring practices, regarding who's in the writer's room, what opportunities are there for directors. The Academy has I think it's called the Academy Gold program, where they have diverse folks, people from multiple backgrounds. And I know for a fact, because I had worked with them, to instill this idea that, okay, we need to incorporate people with disabilities in the diversity language, which oftentimes people with disabilities are left out of the diversity discussion. So we're making sure that those things are said. And then we know from, I'm on the Performers with Disabilities committee at the Screen Actors Guild, and we keep a constant tab on who's on screen. We reach out to our membership and we say, who's on screen now? Jim, you've seen the list. And every year it's getting better in terms of, when I say who's on screen, it's like who with a disability is playing a role on screen, film and television. And these are union jobs we're talking about. So yes, we're definitely moving the needle.
The only thing I know is who's on first. So the Abbott and Costello routine. Look, there are really good.
What's your thoughts on it?
Well, my thoughts are is that I think a lot of us are organizing, and I founded a group with a few other people who are supporting filmmakers with disabilities in the documentary space. And Aaron Brown started an organization called the 1 in 4 Coalition to really engage, with studios and with agencies and such. And organizations like these are getting people placed in real jobs.
And you work directly with the 1 in 4 folks, yeah?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
And so I know you have, what is her name? Who has her own post-production.
Caitlin Yang.
Caitlin Yang, right. So there's a wheelchair user as a post-production company. And there's a number of other folks in that realm. Jenny Gold is a director. There's a number of other folks in that realm of working behind the camera with disability. So definitely we're moving. I know we have to go, but I wanted to say thanks, Jim.
It's really great spending time with you. I'm sorry I went off. I jumped off my soapbox with you.
No, it's good for our community to hear that on a regular basis. And there's more great things going on at ReelAbilities, and you guys need to stick around because coming up is in the festival is 2 great films. Campeones or Champions is a feature-length film, and then Defula follows that, an older black and white piece, which I think you guys will enjoy. So you can go ahead and log in and start watching. You'll have time to join us for a live conversation with Defula filmmaker Peter Wolf at 9:45 after tonight using this very same Zoom login. So that's it. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to our ASL folks, Rachel and Nicole. Thank you very much. And we'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.